September 12, 2004, the New York Times Magazine featured the article Trumpologies by James Traub about the great revelation of The Apprentice. Donald Trump is an egomaniacal, germophobic, multi-millionaire, and yet television viewers and the folks who gather outside Trump Tower hoping for a glimpse can't get enough of him. Mr. Trump's name has become such a byword for success that even the most humiliating reverses barely dent his reputation. Reports had it that he would be forced to place the company that holds his Atlantic City hotel and casino operation into bankruptcy, and in fact, he did just that a few weeks later. Mr. Trump would have to come up with $55 million in cash to preserve his stake in the company. Did he have $55 million? Only an idiot would even ask. Of course he did. He had huge cash flow from his real estate operations. He was stronger than ever. Mr. Trump could have rescued the company with a check if he'd wanted to, but he would rather do it institutionally, with an infusion of capital from his good friends at Donaldson, Lufkin, and Jenrette. His bank, by the way. One of the remarkable things about Trump, at least from a reporter's point of view, is that he does not require an actual interview. He just starts talking. Without even bothering to stand up and shake my hand, he believes shaking hands is a reckless invitation to infectious disease. Mr. Trump said, "Harvey Weinstein calls. He's a friend of mine, you know. He's the head of Miramax. And he says, 'Donald, you know you're the biggest star in Hollywood?' I say, 'What are you talking about?' He says, 'You're the #1 star. You're a superstar on the #1 show in television. Number 4, actually. You saved NBC.' I never thought of it because the rest of the time I'm negotiating with contractors. So I said, 'You know what? It's true.' When Trump took me to the topping off ceremony at Trump Place, he demonstrated his peculiar populism. When his limo glided up to the construction site, he said to me, 'These are the people who love me, and I love them,' and it was true. As soon as Trump got out of the car, a huge roar went up, and the construction workers who had gathered to hear him began to laugh and shout, 'You're fired! You're fired!' Trump looked around and yelled, 'Where's Miss Universe?' He is also a co-owner of the Miss Universe contest. 'Did you ever see Miss Universe of Australia?' He jerked his thumb back to me. 'Hey fellas, this guy's writing for the New York Times Magazine. If he writes badly about me, will you kick the crap out of him?' Mr. Trump glad-handed everyone in sight, gave a speech in which he made fun of the sissy construction workers in Florida, dickered with a structural engineer over a bid for work on a projected skyscraper in Chicago, posed for pictures, and climbed back into the limo to shouts of, 'Take it easy, Donald.' And then he took out a stingingly alcoholic hand towel and rubbed away the traces of promiscuous human contact. Maybe it's an example of what Marxists call false consciousness, but Trump really is a populist plutocrat, and not because he's philanthropic or even liberal-minded. It's the opposite. People seem to like him because he loves his money and spends it just the way they would if they had it, as if he had just won a reality show himself. Is Trump for real? Is he what he says he is on The Apprentice, the supreme artist of the deal and the biggest developer in the toughest town? It has always seemed unjust at a cosmic level that a man could live as if he alone could defy the laws of gravity, brag about doing so, and then get away with it. Surely fate would melt his wings. Is he really worth billions, or is he some sort of master illusionist who earns a very nice fortune by blowing gorgeous bubbles? Does he use billion as a term of art? Mr. Trump told me that Forbes magazine had calculated his net worth at $2.5 billion, though the real number, he said, was $6 billion. In fact, in its most recent profile of Mr. Trump, Fortune noted that weeks of digging into Trump's finances yielded only murk. Mr. Trump's real estate holdings are private and thus ultimately no more penetrable than he wishes them to be. On the other hand, the public company that holds his casino properties lost money for years thanks to the massive debt that Trump assumed, and now the company itself has been forced to reorganize through bankruptcy. Why should all this matter? Shouldn't we just say that Trump is really rich and that he's a really big developer? But it's Trump himself who won't let the issue lie. Mr. Trump keeps threatening to sue reporters who question his numbers. It is, in the end, a matter of brand protection. The Trump brand would probably survive a bit of legal trouble. On the other hand, his brand might be severely compromised if Trump were, say, knocked off the Forbes 500. So much of Trump's success, the premium he earns on his apartments and his golf courses, the millions he gets for the use of his name by developers in South Korea, the Trump signature collection, depends on the aura of stupendous success he projects. Mark Burnett said, Americans want to puff out their chests right now. It's like a fuck you moment, and he's one of us. The genius of The Apprentice from a marketing perspective is that it treats Trump's supremacy as unarguable fact, thus ensuring that the viewers will do so as well. Trump may not be the living incarnation of business, or even of real estate, but he has made a fortune by behaving as if he is. If there's one person who fully accepts the premise of The Apprentice, it's Donald Trump. At one point he said to me, I feel strongly about the fact, and I don't think you've heard this before, that I consider myself to be a great builder. In November 2004, the company filed for bankruptcy protection, the third such trip for Trump's casinos. The bondholders took a $500 million loss. Mr. Trump stepped down as chief executive but remained chairman of the board and agreed to invest $55 million of his own money in the company, perhaps his first cash investment. Mr. Trump still received $2 million a year under a services agreement, which included the use of his name. Shares sometimes traded below $1, but Mr. Trump said the problems had been fixed. Mr. Trump's longtime investment bankers at Donaldson, Lufkin, and Jeanrette backed out of a deal with Mr. Trump to invest in the company shortly before the bankruptcy was filed. Suing for $26 million in fees, his bankers said in court papers that the casinos would be back in bankruptcy court within 5 years because the company was still carrying too much debt. Lawyers for the investment bank said, the Trump name does not connote high-quality amenities and first-class service in the casino industry. Rather, the Trump name is associated with the failure to pay one's debts, a company that has lost money every year, and properties in need of significant deferred maintenance and lagging behind their competitors. The dispute was later settled. David Hanlon, a veteran casino executive, said, Mr. Trump succeeded in repeatedly convincing investors, bankers, and Wall Street that his name had real value. I have to give Trump credit for using his celebrity time and time again. They were so in love with him that they came back a second, third, and fourth time. They let him strip out assets. It was awful to watch. It was astonishing. Sebastian Pignatello, a private investor who at one time held stock in the Trump casinos worth more than $500,000, said, he drove these companies into bankruptcy by his mismanagement, the debt, and the pillaging. People underestimated Donald Trump's ability to pillage.